Here in Europe, measures are being introduced to control the soaring cost of fuel. A new German law restricts gas stations to only raising prices once a day. The law also gives regulators more power to take action against price gouging and price fixing.
At 12 noon, the price is set. From now on, fuel prices in Germany can only go up once per day. The idea comes from Austria. There, prices can be lowered at any time but increased only once, at exactly noon. Pressure is rising as conflicts in the Middle East drive up oil prices. Politicians say their aim is to respond and to make the market more transparent. The German government has introduced this measure in a bid to limit price spikes and improve transparency. We will stop prices from being changed up to 50 times a day. But many people at the pumps don't think this will work. For them, it's about more than just a few cents.
I can't really afford it, but I have no choice. I work as a taxi driver. I need fuel, otherwise I can't make a living.
I have to drive a car. I'm disabled. I can't walk far. I rely on my car. So, how are people coping with the high fuel prices?
Sometimes I switch to my bike. It's only 5 kilometers to work. And I get fuel vouchers from my company, about €50 a month. So for me, it's not that bad.
I can manage the higher prices. I had already started driving less, and that's paying off now. Other people say the measures don't go far enough. They believe that there's a lack of political will. What's the point? Refineries still aren't being transparent. They raise prices however they want, just to fill their own pockets. And the politicians? They earn €30,000 a month. And they don't need to worry about this at all.
I think there are levers they could pull, but I don't see much interest in doing that right now.
But will this measure really help in the long term? For now, at least, most drivers are holding off on breathing a sigh of relief.
Shon Hiatt is an energy expert and professor at the University of Southern California. Welcome to DW. Now, we just heard about the German attempt to manage gas prices. What do you make of this approach?
I think psychologically, this is one way to alleviate some of the price at the pump. If individuals know that the prices will only rise once a day, maybe that will help them feel a little better. But the prices will rise regardless. And so what you're doing is instead of having smaller jumps during the day, you're going to have a larger jump at noon. So they'll still be paying it. The only unintended consequence could be like longer lines at about 11 o'clock in the morning.
Are countries going to get around more heavy-handed interventions if this crisis continues?
I think they will try to in many different ways, but there's not much you can do at this point because all of this takes infrastructure. And the infrastructure has sadly been leaving Europe over the last few years as many oil and gas companies have been shutting down refineries and leaving the continent. And so Europe has become extremely dependent upon imports. It imports 60% of all of its essentially energy needs. And so this is then, I think, leading to a lot of countries, this crisis right now, to think about energy security and ways that countries can become secure again in their energy.
I want to get to that a little later, but we saw in the report someone who said, they take their bike when they don't have enough fuel. Someone who said, I stopped driving all that much already before this crisis happened. And there have been calls for individual action. But really, how much of an impact can it have on this major global crisis if I carpool to work?
Yeah, I think there are two things. At least at the individual level, if you could ride your bike or take public transportation, you're obviously going to conserve those resources for your own household for food, which by the way, as energy prices rise, everything else rises in tandem at a lagged effect. And we're going to start seeing that actually about this month. It usually takes a couple months for the high energy prices to reach into the transportation. And this is when globally we're going to see price increases in the grocery stores, which have the highest turnover and which use the most amounts of transportation. So this is something to think about. But on the more macro front, will it make a difference? It depends. I mean, if you're in a country, let's say South Korea, where their stocks are running low, if everyone begins taking public transportation or carpooling, that could allow for that jet fuel, that diesel fuel to last longer. Europe is in a similar situation. Its reserves are actually shrinking right now. And depending on how long this conflict goes, I mean, Europe doesn't want to run out of jet fuel, right? But if people start, carpooling, they ride their bike, and there's less consumption, that essentially extends the amount of days of stocks that Europe has, and exactly those tankers that you just showed on the screen in those tanks. Yeah.
This war has been extremely profitable for big oil. Why do you think we're not seeing countries imposing windfall profit tax on these companies to alleviate the burden on their citizens?
I mean, that is a short-term thing that they can do to then redistribute some of that money from the differences in like where they had their oil and what the prices are right now in the market, and give it to the citizens. That one of the issues that we've seen is historically these windfall taxes always have a long-term negative effect. There's never been one instance where it's actually turned out better. The UK enacted one, Norway also enacted one in the past. And what we saw is that the companies just leave. And so what that does then is it leads to every subsequent potential crisis becomes even larger, because now there's just nobody producing, and you're more reliant upon imported refined fuels or imported energy sources.
Fascinating stuff. That was Shon Hiatt of USC. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.